Alright, welcome to Bikashweb channel. So this video is about Redux. You can see here action, dispatch, store, reducer, components, use selector, use dispatch, you name it. I know this is super confusing for you and it was for me as well. And I think that's the reason why you are watching this video. So in today's video, I would like to talk about what are the problems that Redux is trying to solve, because I believe that if you know the problem, then it will be easier for you to understand the solution. So this video will be in two parts. First, I will be showing you a little example with some application, some component, and then tell you what are the problem there and why we need to solve that problem. Okay. And then in second part, as a solution, I will introduce Redux. So if that sounds good, then I guess you should watch this video. So for that, please like this video so that others will also enjoy this. And in the same time, if you are new to this channel, please subscribe my channel. With that being said, let's start the video. Okay, for the first part of video, I would like to share you this scenario. This is our application, our React application to be exact. And we have a couple of components, okay? So this is a home component. Don't take it as a final design. This is just for you to understand. And then we have a couple of children component of home. Okay, so home component has a list children and also a input children. Okay, and these all are components. So input and list are rendered inside home. Okay, I hope you have at least that idea from React. If not, it will be difficult for you to understand Redux. So maybe you should a little bit play with React props and components, then it will make a whole lot of sense for you. Okay, so what I want to do is I have this name and I want this value to be dynamic. Okay, first of all, and then also these items inside this list component, they will be also dynamic. Okay, so you can see here we have an input component from where we will be updating our name here. So when we type something here and save it, this name in the parents component should change, number one. And number two, if you type anything in the item and if you click add, this list component which has no direct relation with this input component, so this list should get updated. Okay, so now if you have already done a couple of props passing and passing different kind of function also inside props and children, then probably you can imagine what will be the scenario to solve this. Okay, so one option is if something was already here in home, passing to children is super easy, but now we have to pass something from children to parents and also from children to parents so that another children of that parents will get that data. So I think you kind of understand the whole idea I'm trying to show you. And this is a very simple example, okay? And this can be done easily without implementation of Redux. However, imagine a situation. So I have another situation, and actually I already have a long video about this country API. So in this case, if you see this upper part, this is our app bar component. And inside app bar component, we have search component, okay? And then we have a cart, okay? And then we also have inside our home, we have all this country list, which will be rendering all this country list. Okay. And if someone clicks this cart, then we will see all the items inside cart, and that will be a separate component. Okay. So now if you see, when someone types something in the search, data in this section, in this component should change. Okay. And then if someone clicks add to cart button, it should add something so that our app bar, the main bar, will get that data and this counter will increase. And in the same time, what happens is if we click this, then it will open another items or menu item or whatever this component, and that should show all this data. Okay, so if you keep on saying, then also we had a navbar here or this hamburger menu, and if you click this, this is separate component called sidebar, and if you click any button here, it will change all the colors. Okay, so now we have blue colors, but if you click to green, it should change all this primary color to green, and so on. So if you see, This is pretty advanced in a way. Of course, there are a lot other things to do, but still. So we have one component here, we have another component here, we have menu component here, and then we have all these list component. Inside list we have country cards, and there are buttons, and we have to add buttons from here that should go to here, and it should reflect all the things. Now I think you have a little bit idea about how complex things can get when you have a bigger application, when you have a lot of things going on. So however, I'm not going to go with this country API because I have already done a long video. If you are interested, or if you think that you understood Redux properly after this video, then you can continue here for a pretty advanced. But for now, let's get still back to this simple example. Okay, so let's try to code this without Redux, and let's see what are the problem we will be facing. And then after that, I will come back to the Redux, and then I will also show you with example. Okay, so let's go and open my terminal here. And here I would like to create a React app. So I'm just going to use this simple create React app, and let's call it Redux tutor. Okay, I don't think this is tutorial, but anyway. So I will hit enter, and I will come back when all the installation is done. Now the installation has completed, so let's go inside our Redux tutor, and I will do code to open my VS Code. Inside our VS Code, let's do an start. That is because we have a start script here, and that's all fine for now. So we have beautiful React logo animation. So I would like to clean up this application. So let's keep this app.css as it is. But other than that, let's take these logo, these and these, all of these, let's move them to trash, and that will break a couple of things. So first, we don't have this, and also we don't have this, and I also don't need this, I also don't need this, so, and also we don't need this. Then let's go to our application. Let's go and delete everything. Let's call it just simple application. We don't have logo. And let's go inside our CSS, and we don't need anything, and we can just call it application for now, and that's all. Now if we go here, then welcome to our tutorial. Okay, so now if I go and refresh, you can see welcome to our tutorial. So next, as you can see inside our application, we have our main home component. So let's just go here, and here in our source directory, let's call something called components, and inside component we will have home.js. So another one is list.js, and then the last one is input.js. And inside our home we go, and this is our home component, so home for now. And then let's copy this, let's paste it here, and let's call it input, and then let's paste also here, and let's call it list. So with that, we have all the three components we needed. And then let's go and wrap a home component inside our application, and then list and input inside our home. So first thing first, let's go to our application here, and then okay, so import home from components and home. And now let's go here, and let's just do our home here. So now our home component is inside our application, and inside our home, let's go and let's also import input from input, and also list from list. All right, then we will do the classing and everything design later, but for now let's go here, and let's give list component, and then we can have also our input component. And if all that is done good, you can see that we have our list component, we have our input component, and all our components are done. Next, I will do a little bit of design just to give idea. So I will pause the video, complete the design, and I will get back to you. Okay, so now I have this application ready. I did a little bit of designing here. I will show you what I did so far. So in our app.js, we have home, so nothing changed here. And inside our home thing here, so now I have something here, and this is called top. And then inside our home, and I have something called home children. So let's just move them a bit. Okay, maybe not that much, but something like this and something like this. So I have home children. Inside I have the same list component and same input component. And then in our home I have this heading called home component, and I have name, and this is now static value, which we need to change it and make it dynamic. Nothing much here. And then the same thing in input. So I have now input heading, and then I have two input fields. So if you see here, we have this field, and this field is basically the same thing as in design, a little bit different than design, but the concept is same. And then inside our list, basically I have something called list, and then I don't know why let's see if I can. Okay, this is good. Let's go and format everything. So inside list, you can see that I have the title list, and then I have an item here, and this item we will be iterating it as much as we have items in our array. So we will have an array called lists, and that we need array. So we need this for this list component. And then for our home component, we need something name here. So we need, let's say, name for, I will do. So we need this name component for here, and I will go and I will do name here. And then for list, let's do something here. So let's call it list, and here we will have item 1 and item 2. And then here what we can do is, that's why I said that you need to have a basic understanding of React and components and all this JavaScript. Then only it's easy for you to understand Redux. So sorry to disappoint you if you don't know that it. I highly recommend you to start from that. And I think I will also make videos related to basic of React, and you can also find other videos in my channel, so you will understand React better. We will do here list, and then this is a mapping. So let's do mapping, and then inside here we can pass function, but also we can use arrow function. So let's call item, and then here we don't need to return. So if we use this bracket, that is like returning. So here all I can do is I can simply pass this here. And now instead of this item, what I can do is I can pass item. And if you know, React will complain that each item needs a unique key. So for now I'm just going to do this index, but in our real life we will have some unique ID, and we will be passing that ID. But this is okay for us. Now let me do formatting. Just a minute. Okay, so now we will have item 1 and item 2. This will be good. And then here we will have this. So all this good now. And if you see, we have item 1, item 2, and the same name. That's all good. Now let's go to our input component, and inside this component I have created some state. So this is our form data state, and this state is using React hook, and I hope you understand what is React hook. If not, then you can find another videos in my channel where I will be explaining about React hook. Videos are coming, so even for that you need to subscribe my channel. So the reason why I started this, and I have form data. Of course, I could have done also separate state for name and then separate state for item. If you see in our design, we have name and item. So, but instead of that, I did a combination or combine state, and that will be an object, and it will have name and item. Initially, they will be empty, and then we have something called handle change. So of course I could have also done handle name change, handle item change, and have them separated. But for this, what I'm going to do is I have event, and I'm going to use this key. So this will be name if we are using this, and item if we are using this. So automatically that will get the target value for that object, and we are setting that state here. And then we have a function handle name update, which is an empty function, and same with handle add item, and that is also an empty function, and we are attaching that. So when we add item, this function will be fired, and when we'll save name, this function will fire. Okay, that's all. So now our first problem. So how to do? Okay, well, we can do here handle name update. What I can do is I can console log here, and what I can console log is I can console log this form data. It's easier that way. And then I will also copy the same thing, and I will console log form data also in handle add item. Now if I save this, and if I go here, let's open our console, and inside console, okay, so let's say the name will be, okay, we don't have it responsive, so let's hidden, change name. Okay, so if I click this button, this should fire our handle name update, and you can see that it updated, and inside our form data object, our name has this value. Okay, now let's also have new item, and if I add, now you can see that our name has changed name and our item has new item. So far nothing bad. Okay, so now how to get this change name here, and how to get this new item added to our list here. Okay, that's the challenge. So there is an easy way to do it. I wouldn't say it easy, but way to do it. And one way will be, first we go to our home, and inside home, instead of using this name, what I can do is I can also do set name, same React hook. So I will call use state, and then here initially it will be, okay, this will be the name, and we have this name. That's all good. And here what we can do is we can also create a function, and that will also be same thing as handle name update, and we will be getting some value as an argument, and this value we will be updating here with this. So okay, so we have this function. So if we can somehow call this function and pass the name value here, then that will change this name, and when that name will be changed, we will get this name here. Okay, but the question is, we don't have that input here. We have input component, but we don't have this function here, this function here. Those functions are inside our input component, which is our children component. Okay, so what we can do here is we can do on name update. You can give whatever the name you want, and we are passing a function prop. Okay, just like how we can pass, let's say, example, and example can be just an example. So how we can pass prop, just like that we can also pass function and call that function from our children. Okay, so there I can just pass this function. So all I'm doing is passing the function, this parent function, to children. And then if I go inside our children here, then I need to take that here in here as a props. So I can go, okay, let's see what was the name. Okay, on name update. All right, the reason why I used name is I don't want to use the same name like handle name update, so that it will not complain us. And then what I can do is, now we have that component available here. All I need to do here is call that, and remember this is a function, so this function, and this function expects something as an argument, and that argument will be form data, and remember we need name from here. Now if you see, when we type something in this input, we will have this handle change, and that handle change will automatically take the key name, and in our case that key name will be name, so that object name, and then the value, whatever the value we have, and the value will be whatever we will be typing there. Okay, that will be updated to our form data because we are using set form data. All right, and now what we are doing is, when we have that data, when we click handle name update, it will call this. Of course it will also console log, but in the same time it will call parents function and pass that name value. And if we have done everything right, let's go back here, and now in the beginning we have Bikashweb, but let's say I want to type YouTube, and if I save, you can see we have YouTube here. So you see, this way I change parents state from children. That is good. Now we also need to do something here, and that is a little bit difficult than directly passing something to parents. And for that we need to first, if you use the same logic, then we need to have also some other props called on list update. Okay, and I'm not going to do it, but I'm just telling you. And this on list update we will be using here in our handle add item, and then in our parents, if we go here in our home here, we will have same thing, just like that. We will have something called what happened. Okay, so we will have something called here lists, and we will have something called set lists. Okay, and then we can do the same, and initially it will be an empty array. And then what we need to do is, here we need to pass this list. Okay, and then here we need to also pass another function called handle list update, and then we need to make similar function here, and that function will automatically update our list array, and then our list item will get that array and show the change. And you can see how difficult it already gets, and this is still a simple example. But imagine inside our list component we have something else, some other children. In that case we have to first pass like something from here to parents, from parents to these children, and maybe to sub children, and if we need to do some action from that children, then again we need to go through all the way up and then all the way down. And you can understand that in this application how complicated it gets. And that is the reason why we have something called state management, because for this simple example, as you see, I can easily do it. Okay, that's not a big problem. So as your application grows, you need to keep on adding different kind of children components, and then maybe there will be more separate components. Somewhere you need states, and somewhere you need to do some state changes and everything, and that will get super difficult with our this kind of approach, and this is also called prop drilling. So we are just passing props, getting props, and then whenever we need to do something in our let's say children component, for example, let's say if we have some other component here, and let's say this is our list children component, and let's say inside here we also have some input. Okay, let's say we have some input here. Okay, let's assume that this is an input, and whatever you do here, it should also change something here. Let's say inside our here, and then we have something input name, and this name should be changed from this children, and this belongs to this list. So think about, first from home we have to pass some function here, and from here we have to pass some function here. So whenever something happens here, this will change, call this function in the parents, and then that will call this function in the parents, that will change everything, and then it will pass this as a prop to this function, this component, and you can understand already how complicated it gets, and it just gets more and more and more difficult as your application grows. So introducing you Redux. Okay, so how does Redux solve all this problem? I told you already that when you understand the problem, it will be easier for you to understand the solution. So for that, let me hide all these for now. And okay, so first thing first, let me hide this and let me hide that as well. So I have a scenario. There is a component, and with a couple of child. You can imagine this is separate component. It can also have multiple children. It doesn't matter. So the whole idea here with state management is, instead of having, for example, in our case, if you see, our home had this name, and we were also using list here. Okay, so our home had all the state because it was the top level component. So the idea is still the same, but the difference being is our state was here in home, but in our Redux, all of those will stay in something called main store. Okay, so, and that store is in the top level of all your application. So it will be available for all your application and all the component, children's and everything. So there will be something called some central system. Let's say this is a shop, and doesn't matter which house you have, or maybe which room inside house you are, it doesn't matter, because instead of getting anything from one house, you are getting from some external shop. Let's say it is external, still available for you. Okay, so all the states, your name, your list, your profile, your post, everything will be inside this store. And whenever you need to do any changes, okay, then you need to call some function to make this store updated. And for that we have something called actions. Actions are nothing but just function. As your application grows, you keep on adding more and more functions, and they are called actions inside Redux. Okay, so each action or each function have certain purpose. Okay, so let's say in our case we had name here. So to change name, we will have a name state inside our store, and we will have action just like our function to update that or to change that name. Similarly, we have list item. So in that case, we will have a list state in our store and action to update that list. It can be deleting that list, or deleting item from that list, or adding an item to that list. Okay, and similarly, let's say in future you have your user profile, you have many other things, then we will create a state here, and we will create action function to update that state. Okay, and then because they both are available to each and every components inside your application, so whenever you need, instead of going to some component and asking it as a props, you can get everything from the store. Okay, and whenever you need to make some changes, instead of going to parents and parents and parents, you can call this action function, which is available for all the components. Doesn't matter whether it's a parents component or children component, and that action will do the job of changing the store. So whenever we change any states inside our store, then in every component where we are using that state, they all get updated. And that's the beauty about state management. And Redux is just one way of managing state. Okay, 1 or 2 minutes, I will still explain this and then we will go with example. Okay, bear with me. So now, when we have to make any changes, any component, they will call this function. And you know, in Redux, we cannot call this function directly. We need to dispatch this. So there is some function called dispatch available in React Redux. So first we will import that function called dispatch, and inside dispatch we will be passing this function. When this function will be called, this function will do something. This function will define some type, okay, and it will send also something called payload, and they will be sent to our reducer, actually to our Redux, or under hood it will be dispatched. So it is available for our reducer to listen them, okay. And reducer is nothing than also function, and you will see it with example even better. But each of those function, each of our state will have separate reducer, okay. And then those function, they are constantly all the time listening all these actions, and whenever the type matches with any of the functions type, then whatever we are doing, the logic there, it will take place and it will update our state, okay. And when the states are updated again, so let's say, so this will send type and then payload, and the function will listen it, and whenever we have any state updated, since we are getting the state directly to our component, all this component will reflect the change. Okay, too much about theoretical thing. Let's go to the action. Okay, so first thing first, let's go here and let's create a folder called Redux, and in the same time I will also add Redux. So this Redux is to get the store, and React Redux, we will use this for using dispatch. I told you we have to dispatch action, and also we need to get all the state in our store. So this Redux and React Redux will do those. So while adding this, let's go inside our Redux, and of course for now we can use everything in one folder, but just as I have this example. So we have store and we have reducer. Store will have all the reducer, and we have action. So let's go and create store, action, reducer. Okay, for that, what I can do is let's call it reducer, and this is nothing than JavaScript file, and then I will call store. Okay, this is also nothing than JavaScript file, and then I will have action. Okay, actually we can even call it actions, and we can call it reducers, and that's it. So we have store, we have reducer, we have action. Okay, so the first thing first, we need to go and create our store. Okay, so to create our store, we need a couple of things. First, we need to use our Redux. Okay, so we have Redux, and inside Redux we will be using create store. Okay, that is something coming from Redux, and that will let us to create our store here, our main store. Okay, and I have written here all reducers. Okay, so that means our main store will have all our reducer, all our state. Okay, so let's go here, and first we need to create reducer. Okay, because we need at least one reducer, and then only we can pass that reducer to our store. Okay, because creating a store is super easy. So let's do const store, and all I need to call is this function, and then I need to pass a couple of things here. Okay, in future we need to pass a lot of things, but for our this tutorial, this video, we will only pass one thing, and that will be our reducer. Or actually, let's call it reducer, okay, for now. However, we don't have this reducer, and then we will export it, and let's call it export default, and we are exporting this store. So you see, we already created our store. It's super simple. All we need to do is import this create store from Redux, and then use that and pass our reducer. So now we need to have our reducer. Okay, so let's go inside here and let's create a fast reducer. Of course, we will be changing this because you see, in our application we need at least 2 reducers or 2 states, big state. So one will be our items, so that will be list, and another will be name, and they are not related to each other. So that's why we want to separate them. Okay, so this list will be an array, and this name will be just a string. That's all. So let's go and first let's call our first reducer. We need our name reducer. Okay, so all it does is it handles everything related to our name. So this is a function, and we will call it name reducer. Okay, and then I told you this reducer is nothing but just a function. Okay, well, I don't need this arrow here. And so what this function does, okay, so its reducer will have state definition. Okay, so what does this holds? I told you that so if we go back here, our main store will be the collection of reducer, and reducer is nothing than a function. Okay, so we have that this is basically a reducer. I know it sounds super fancy with name like reducer, action, but at the end of the day they are just functions. So this is reducer, but what we need, let's call initial name state. Okay, or even if you want, we can call initial name reducer state. I will just call initial state. Okay, so and this will be an object, always object. Okay, and then inside object, all we need in our case will be name, and let's also have initial value, and that will be the same value we had. And in future you can keep on adding more. For example, you can also have, let's say, age, and I'm 12-year-old, and then let's say sex, and okay, I'm male. So you know, you can have a lot of things. You can even have posts. I don't know why we need that inside our name reducer, but you got the idea. So we can have a lot of those things as our initial state, and each reducer, they expect something. One is state and another is action. Okay, so state in the beginning will be empty, so we want to pass our initial state here. So all we are doing is basically, if you see, the same thing we are doing. We have a state and we have initial value. That's exactly the same thing here. We have state and that has initial value. Okay, if I wanted it, actually, if I want just to be string, I can even do here, and I don't need this at all. That is still good, that is still okay. But I'm just showing you the concept that if you start with an object, then you have more room to add more item there. Okay, that's the only thing. So you know what, let's just do this. Because we know that we will be only using names, so let's just make it even easier. And what is this action? Okay, so if you see here in our, then all the reducer, I told you that our action will, our function, which we call action, they will have 2 things. One is type and another is payload. Of course, you can call it anything. It doesn't need to be type and payload. You can call it type and value. You can call it type and data. You can call it type and name. You can call it anything as you want, but this is more like a standard practice. So I'm calling it type and payload. So this action will be firing type and payload. So our reducer need to listen that action. Okay, so we will have this action, and inside action we will get action.type, and also we will get action.payload, because this action is nothing than an object, and that object we will be passing from our action. So we will be returning something with type, and we will have different type name, and then we will have also payload. As I said, you can call it value, you can call it name, you can call it list. It's up to you, but this is a standard practice. Okay, so that's why we have action and we have a state. And then we need to do a couple of things. So we can use switch. You can also use if, but I think switch is better. And what we will be switch? So we will be using action.type, because I told you that these types are like a code. They are code. They are code, so that our reducer understands that which type we are talking about, you know. So that's why we are using this type. And at the moment, all I want to do is I have a default and I'm just returning state. Okay, that's all I'm going to do it. So I'm not using anything from action.type, and I am not also using anything else from action to use it for now. And this is all good. Okay, so the next one is our list reducer, and it also requires some initial state. You see, just like this, we also need some state here, and it can be, just for example, let's call list initial state. And I told you we have object here, and list will be our array. Initially it's empty. If we want, for example, loading, we can also have false in the beginning, and when actually something happens we can show it true and everything, but we don't need all this now. All we have is just this list. Okay, now just like this, let's also call function, and it will be list reducer. Okay, and then so it will also have state, and we need initial state, so that's why we have this list initial state. And then we will also have action here. So when this function is called, we need initial state, and then we need action. So from where we are going to get this action, I will come there in a minute. So here we also do the similar thing. So we will also use action.type. Okay, and that's why we call it type. You can call it anything, but I think that's what you will see everywhere else, so why not? And here also all I need to do is state. Okay, and that's it. Let's just indent it. So now so we have one reducer, another reducer. You see, here we have one reducer, another reducer. So we have to combine this reducer, because we can, in our store, if you see, we need only one reducer, but here we already have two reducers. And as your application grows, you will have multiple reducers. Actually, in the bigger application, we will have a separate file, and each of those files will be, you know, different reducer, and a lot of logic are going there. But in our case, these two are pretty okay. So now we need to combine this. So let's combine all reducers to one. Okay, and for that we can call it what we have used here. So we want reducer. Okay, so let's just call it reducer. People call it root reducer, main store, whatever, but root reducer. Okay, let's just call it reducer. And then actually, you know what, it's good to call it root reducer. Name doesn't matter that much, but still. And we will be combining them, just combining. You heard me right. And we'll combine. So what we do is we will pass name reducer as our name reducer. Okay, and then we will also have list reducer as list reducer. Okay, but where do we have this combine function? Okay, how do we get it? And also we can already export this as default, and we can call it root reducer. But you see, we don't have this combine, and we will be getting that combine from our Redux. So that's why I had this first line empty. Okay, so we need something from Redux, and you see there is something called combine reducers. Okay, so now instead of this combine, I will call it combine reducers. So what it does is it combines all reducer in our application. So we have list reducer, we have name reducer in our this bigger application here. I had countries, I have card, and I had other different. So you can see the video. Now I think, and you know, in JavaScript, when we have the same key name and same variable name, we don't need to do this, and we also don't need to do this, because that is what new JavaScript does. So now I have a root reducer available. So let's go to our store, and let's import root reducer from reducers. And inside here, instead of reducer, we are passing a root reducer. Okay, so now you see our this store has this store is our main state. So, and what this state will have, this store will have, okay, let's say this is our store. So now our store, what it will have, if you go to our reducer here, we will have name reducer. Okay, and so our store have name reducer, and then name reducer will have some value here, sorry, and then we'll have name reducer, and then we will have the same reducer here. So whatever this combined reducer have, we will have the same thing. So we will also have list reducer. So our this store will have name reducer state and list reducer state. Okay, and how can we get this list? And to get this list, we have list reducer, and you see this list reducer has this key list, so we can get that by list, and this is same as this state here. Okay, of course in the beginning it is empty, we will be updating it, and that is what we will be doing with action. Okay, so now our store setup is completed. The next thing is we will be dealing about action. Let's delete this. We will need it at some point. I can have this example just commented out. Okay, now let's go to our action. We are here in our action, and how many actions do we need? Okay, if you remember, we have two actions. One is to update the name, another is to add item to this list. Okay, so let's go and let's do those two actions. So first one, update name action. Okay, so basically the same, we have reducer, one is name reducer, another is list reducer. So of course inside one reducer we can have different types, and one can be removing, one can be adding, one can be deleting. Well, deleting and removing it's same, but anyway. So let's let's export it so that we can use this action in our component. So that's why I'm exporting it. and I will call it update name. So you have to give our action pretty nice name that is easy to understand, and that function will be expecting some argument, and in our case name is enough, and this is an arrow function. So what I need to do is, all it does is it will return an object. Okay, or you can call this, or even for, you will see in many places people will have this, and then there will be type, and let's say type will be update name, and then you will see payload, and payload will be in our case this name that we are getting from here. You can do this, okay, and we will be doing this, but to make it easier for you to understand, I will call something here, and that will be const action, and this action will be our object, and that will have something called type, and type will be update name, and then it will have payload. I told you that you can use value, you can use data, you can use list, you can use name, you can be creative with that, but I will recommend you to use this so that other can easily understand. And payload in our case is name, and instead of returning this, we can return action. Okay, so this is totally okay. Now if you remember, when we return this action, somehow with the magic of Redux, our reducers here, they will get this action. All our reducer will get this action, and that's why I told you that you cannot call this function just like, you cannot just call here update name, and then if you just pass, let's say Bikashweb, or just like this, if you just call this function, okay, it might do something, but our reducers, they will not listen that action. That's why we need to dispatch this, and we have something called use dispatch in our React Redux. So we will use this use dispatch, and then inside that we will actually call this action function, and when we do something like this, then only, because this use dispatch will be coming from our React Redux, and because of that, with the magic of Redux and React Redux, this is actually a hook, okay, Redux hook. So then only our reducer can get that action, and then as you can see, our action has something called type. So reducer will check the type, and then here we will have one case, and that case will be the same as this update name, and that's why there are also this proper practice. So we can call this update name, and then we have this value. We can export this, and instead of writing hard-coded data here, we can use, let's say, this, and then here in case we can also import that, and then there also we can use this. But for this video, I will not use this constant creation. You can even use separate file to create all the constant that are related with your Redux, but for now I'm not going to do it. I will be only directly using this name, because we only will have 2 actions and 2 reducers. And then let's delete this for now, and then if you go here, so we will have a case called update name, and when this case will be there, we will have a couple of things to do. When this case matches, we will return our state with action, and if you remember here, we are using payload. That's why I told you that if you want, you can even call it name, okay, and if you call this name, then here we will have action.name, and if you call it payload, we will have action.payload, but I will call it payload, and I will also put payload here. So I think now you understood that this action, our reducer will automatically get it. Our reducers are constantly listening all actions, okay, doesn't matter whether it is meant for name, whether it's meant for list, they are all listening, and we will verify it with console log later. So when this matches, then this will happen. So our state, and that's why I told you that it's way easier to do init name state, and let's do it like this. And here initially we have basically same, and instead of here let's give it initial name state. And what we can do is, instead of this, we can return whatever our state has, and then only we change the name value, action payload. Okay, so this is just we are changing the value of our object state, and in our case we have only name. But let's say if you had age, then when you will be updating, so when you are updating this name, only this name will get updated and this age will be untouched. So it will be whatever in the current state it will be. So that's why there is that. But again, in our case, even if I do just this, it will be enough, but just for good practice I am keeping it there. Okay, so now what happens is, when we dispatch this action update name and pass this name value here, okay, let's do payload name. So then this update name will return two things, one type and another payload, and that payload will be the same name we will be passing there. And now instead of doing return action, all we can do here is directly return. I was just showing you so you will understand that. And it will return this, and all our reducer will be listening it, and whenever this case matches, this will happen. Okay, so if that's the case, then let's also go and do similar thing. So, and that will be add item to list action. Okay, we don't have remove item anything, so here also we will call add item. Okay, let's just say add item, and this will expect item. Okay, and then you got it right, we will return. So can we use this same? Okay, so let's say this payload will be item. So what happens if I do same? If I do same, then our reducer will, this case will be matched in both the cases, and whatever the item we will be pass, our name will be updated with this item. So that's why we cannot use this duplicate value. So let's say in this case we can call add item. Okay, and now let's copy this. That's why we need constant, so that we don't need to copy this all the time. We have it in one place and we can use it in many places. And when some new developer comes, or if you are viewing your project later, then you can understand that what are the types that you are using. So, but that's up to you. Now let's go to our reducer here, and then just like here, I will create another case, and that case will be, okay, add item. And here also we need to do something, so we need to return something, and let's do everything as it is, and then we will be updating our list, which, let's say, new list. Okay, and that will be it will be an array, and let's call everything from our list, and then we can add action.payload. Now you got the idea that we will get this action.payload from here. Okay, so now whether we call this or this, our both reducer will be listening it, they will be watching it. But when the type matches this case, this will run. When the type matches this case, this will run. Okay, that's all. Now we can save this, we can save this, we can save this. So far so good. So now there is one important thing we are missing, and that is we have reducer, we have store, we also have action. And here what we need to do is we need to import a couple of things here, actually just one thing, and that is from our React Redux. Okay, I told you that we use Redux for combining reducers and making a store, and we use React Redux to communicate. Okay, so first thing, actually only one thing, I don't know why I keep on saying first thing, we need to wrap our application with this component, and that is provide. Let's call this provider here. And still our job is not done, so we have to pass something called store here, and we need that store. Okay, now how are we going to get that store? It's easy solution. All we need to do is go here, let's give couple of enter, import, and we are going to import our store from our Redux and our store. If you remember, in our store we have this create store, and inside our reducer you can see that we have name reducer that has name, list reducer that has list. Okay, so when we use that store, we have all this store value, and then we are wrapping all our application with this provider, and that provider comes from React Redux. I think now you understand that how this works is at the end of the day we are still passing props. You know, in our previous example we were passing props from here to this component, but now we are passing props to our provider, which is wrapping all our application component. And whatever we will add in future, we will add everything inside our here. So if we have routes, you know, everything. So that's why everything will get that state. So with that, I think we are pretty much done with our setup. All we need to do is now we have to, you know, we need to get this name. So we can delete this, and also we can delete this, and also we can delete this, because we don't need to pass anything from our parents. And you see we don't have name here. So first thing first, let's go here and let's go and import from React Redux, and that will be, if you see in my file here, so to get state we need something called use selector. Okay, so let's go and let's have use selector. So now from there we can get our name. And how can we get that? So we call this use selector function. So with this use selector we can have a function, and that function can have a main state. You can call it main state, you can call it main store, you can call it root reducer, you can call it anything. And then from that root reducer, remember in our store we have a root reducer, and inside root reducer we have name reducer, and inside name reducer we have name. Okay, so let's just go here and call return, and root reducer inside we have name reducer, and inside there we have name. Okay, and this is all good, and now we have our name. And if you don't believe me, let's go and let's start this, and when I refresh, you see we have this Bikashweb, and that is coming from our reducer here. So let's go and let's change this to new value. Okay, and if I go and refresh, you will see we have a new value. So now you can see that how we can get let me go back and still keep that. Now you can see that how easily just with this use selector we can get name. And if we use basically the same thing, just to show you, let's say we need the same name also in our input. Okay, well then what we can do is here, okay, let's me put this here. So now we have also name available here inside our children, you know, we don't need to pass any props. And then just to show you example here, I'm going to render same name. Now if we go back here and let's refresh, I don't know why my hot reload is not working, but can you see this name is also available here and this name is also available here. And if I go and change in our reducer to, let's say, YouTube, and if I refresh, I don't know why this doesn't work on my hot reload, but you see the same value is shown here. And this is the magic of Redux. Now we have our reducer and we use selector and we get our store state. Okay, I have here store state. We can also call it root reducer. You can call it anything. Not only that, if you want to go here and let's say if we have something called in our reducer, let's go and let's say inside our list we also have list name and I will call it example name. Okay, if we have this and if we need this value in our home, how can we get it? Okay, just like this, let's copy paste this and let's just call list name, whatever we have it here. And then you see we use the same use selector, we have the same root reducer, but inside root reducer, if you go here in our store, inside root reducer we need list reducer and we have list name. Okay, so let's go and let's call this. So we have first this and then inside that object we have list name. Okay, now if I want to also print list name here, and then if I go here and if I refresh, you see we have that example name here. So this is the magic of our Redux, magic of our store, that we can use value anywhere in our component. So let's just delete this, we don't need this. And also was it in our input? Okay, let's also delete this because we don't need that name in our input, and we can delete this selector, and with that we don't have this value, so let's delete this. I'm doing a little bit of housekeeping here. And okay, so you see this function we can even make it a bit simpler. So you know, when we have something, let me just copy this, and when we have something like this, we can also call it with our arrow function, so root reducer, and then when we have only one line to return, we can just do root reducer dot name reducer dot name. So we can do something like this, and we don't need this. So basically the same logic, if we copy it and then here if we paste it like this, this is basically the same thing. So I hope you know that arrow function. So you see we still have the same, and instead of calling this root reducer, I will just like to call it state. You know, you can call it anything you want, it's just the name, and this is still the same. Okay, so this is done. The next thing we want is, let's go to our reducer, and we don't need this example here, but here we can have item 1 and item 2. Okay, now let's go inside our list, and you see we had this instead of that, we need to import our use selector from React Redux, and we can call it use selector, and now if you remember, we call it state instead of root reducer. You can call it still, and we have state. And then let's go back here, and that is list reducer. So, and then we have, is it list? Yes, we have this. So, and now we have the same list. And if I go and actually, just to make it easier, item in reducer 1, and then there is item 2. So now if I go and refresh this, you can see we have this item, we have this item. So far so good. We already got our state from our Redux store. Okay, so this part is already done. The next thing is, how can we change the value? Okay, so that is what we need to do now. And you see we already have our action called update name, and that does all this, and then our reducer will listen that case, and then it will update with whatever the payload we are passing. So we have even that set up. So now let's copy this name, and then let's go inside our input component, and we need to import something from React Redux, and this time it is none other than use dispatch. Remember, I said we need to use dispatch, and we can call this action function. Okay, so that means we also need to import our action function, or just to be clear, okay, so Redux and then actions, and inside action we have something called update name. Okay, let's now what we can do is, you see here on name update, we don't have this on name update props anymore in our input component. So let's delete this, and here we can call it use dispatch, and then inside use dispatch we call that function. And remember, this function, it expects something, and that is name. So we will pass that name, and that name is nothing than this. Okay, so now if we save this, okay, so that's interesting, and I was expecting this, although we are calling this function. But if we do something like this, we will get this kind of warning, this kind of error. So to solve that, you need to assign this to some variable, and you can call it use dispatch. You see, so basically this is nothing than the same function. But if we do something like this, then now this is available, and we can now call dispatch. Okay, you don't need to call this dispatch, you can also call fire, and we can call this fire here. Okay, and now if I refresh this, okay, so we have initially YouTube, and let's change that to Bikashweb dot, and when I save this, you see this value gets updated. And now to walk you through, let's not call it fire, let's call it dispatch. Okay, this is better. So we are dispatching action. Okay, now let's see what happens. So when we dispatch this function is called, and this function will return this. And remember, I was telling you that no matter, even if we are calling this type, this list reducer is still listening that type. And if you don't believe, I will console log here, and inside list reducer, and let's just console log this action. And also similar thing, let's go, but this is not list reducer, this is name reducer. And then inside our input, let's remove this console log from here, and let's also remove this console log from here. Now if we go back, if I refresh the page, so we will get this initial, and you can already see here we have inside name reducer, inside name reducer, list reducer, list reducer. So this reducer function, they already run, and that's how we get this initial value. And now when I do something here, you see now we have inside name reducer, and we are getting this type called update name, because that's the type this action is firing, and this is also sending payload to name. So if you see here, then we are getting that payload, and that is Bikashweb. Okay, but you see inside name reducer, but also we have something called inside list reducer, and if you see we have exactly the same action available also inside list reducer. The only difference here is because this key is not assigned here, so that case, inside our list reducer, we didn't have anything called update name. And just to show you, if I use this update name here, at least in TypeScript it used to automatically complain us, but let's go and refresh, and let's try to do something. You see this got added here, and this also got changed here. So now so you see these both are called, and because they both have the same name, so this does updating list and this does updating name. And that's why if we go here and if I put another, it will change this to another, but it will add that another in the list. You see, it will add that to list. So that's why I told you that this is not good, that you cannot repeat it. So let's just go and do add item, and then inside our input here, let's also import this function, and then this is basically the same thing. So we can copy this and we can paste here, and instead of this we have add item, and instead of name we have item. Okay, basically when we click this handle add item, it will dispatch add item with this item, and that item will be from here. And when we click save, it will dispatch this, and that's all. Now if we go and refresh our page, and we have two items, and now I will change it to Bikashweb. It will change here, and here with item, let's say new item, and we see new item. And you can see that even when I'm adding item, both reducer are working, and even when I'm saving, both reducer are working. It's just that whatever the case matches, that will take place. That's all. And now I think you can understand this pretty clearly, that we have a store, and all the data we are getting, we using use selector, and then we have action, and we can fire this action from anywhere. So in our case, we are importing this action only inside input, but you can import this and this too, and then you can initialize dispatch, and then you can dispatch these actions from anywhere. Doesn't matter whether it is your parents component, whether it is your children component. Okay, so and then the same thing with getting state. You can get your state anywhere. Let's say one day you have a requirement that you need all of these items also in your home component here. Okay, you need all these. So how will you get this? Well, first thing, let's go to our reducer and let's clear this empty state. Okay, so let's say we need to go to home, and here, just like how we are getting list here, let's copy paste this. Okay, now we have list also available in our home component. And then just like here, how we are doing it, let's just copy this, and inside our home, here inside our as tag, let's just paste it. Now you will see what happens. Let's refresh this. So initially we didn't have anything here. Now let's item 1, and you see that we will have item here, and we will also item here in home component. You see, let's say new item. You see, now we have it also here. And just like that, you can use those state anywhere you want. And if we want, we can also attach some button here and update this, or we can also attach the same button here and update this. And for that, all you need to do is just import use dispatch from React Redux, and then import actions that you want to use from your actions wherever you are saving them. And then you have to initialize this, and then you have to just dispatch those actions and pass whatever the data your action function is expecting. And with all that, I think we can easily wrap up this video. And I think you understood overall what is Redux, why Redux exists in the first place, what are the problems without Redux, and how to solve it with Redux. So I think if we go back to this, now you understand what is dispatching function means, what are actions means, what are type and payload means, what is this type and payload matching with reducer means, and what is main store that combines all these reducers means. So you have code available in my GitHub. You can check it, you can practice it, you can watch this video as many times as you want, and try making, I will give you a simple task. So inside reducer here, try creating another reducer called, let's say, food list reducer. Try this, and then inside action have something called add food to the list, not food, sorry, food to the list. Okay, have that. And then here, just you have list, create another component which will have food, and then create another just like what I have here in input. Okay, I will delete this, but that will be your task. And here, just like we have these two inputs, so you can have third input, and that will be add food item. And so you will have add, I don't know why I'm writing food. So add food item, and then when you add this food item, your separate component here called food component. So you need to go here, and just like this, you need to have a food component, and then you can use that food component inside here. You might need to do some CSS changes, but that is still okay. And when you are done, you can just comment it your GitHub repo so that other can, see it, and maybe they can give you feedback. So with that, I think our Redux is clear. And if not, you can of course comment it out, and I can make further videos clearing your doubts and any problem, any issues you have understanding with. So I thank you for watching this video, and if you like this video, please like this video, hit that thumbs button so that other people can also see this video, and also subscribe my channel for other contents similar to this. Until next, keep coding.